This is Hannibal here from thehannibaltv.com with my weekly review of the points I find interesting in Dave Meltzer's Wrestling Observer newsletter. So let me dive right into it. As far as CM Punk goes, people are still talking about if he's going to show up at Survivor Series. If he is, it's being kept very quiet. There have been chants for CM Punk, sorry, in Saudi Arabia at the recent pay-per-view and at Raw in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania last Monday. It's going to be a decision between Vince McMahon, Paul Levesque, and Nick Khan. You would imagine, though, if the Saudi Arabia people who pay about 50 to 55 million in an event are interested in him, there might be some pressure there to bring him back, to at least test him out. They might feel it could be a shot to AEW. However, they might also feel that the negatives might outweigh the positives for him. Only time will tell. Impact is also interested in him, as are New Japan. Of course, neither of those companies could pay anywhere near what WWE could pay. TKO had its first investors call on November the 7th. It was Ari Emanuel, the chief executive officer of TKO, and chief financial officer Andrew Schelmer on the call, as well as COO Mark Shapiro. They actually had a loss for the third quarter of $21.9 million. A lot of that had to do with dividends paid to stockholders from WWE related to the sale. The company's largest shareholder, Vince McMahon, has announced that he's going to sell over 8 million of his stock. That's only a small percentage of his stock, though. He still has 28.84 million in shares of the company. And he did receive 111,322,000 dividend from the sale of the company, which is pretty huge. TKO is no longer announcing ticket sales to WWE events. However, they did say in quarter three. Now, keep in mind, they are doing less events. There's very few house shows now compared to recent years. So they go to less places, so more people drive from outside to events now. And TV tapings generally get more for events, but they're doing very well for events. They averaged, now this also includes pay-per-views, 11,400 fans. Or wait, hold on a second. Yeah, they went to 11,400 fans per event, which is pretty good. Raw went from an average of 9,400 to 9,800. House shows went down from an average of 6,100 to 5,700, and SmackDown went up from 10,200 to 11,400 per event. It's going to be interesting if they switch around the star power of SmackDown, since SmackDown is no longer going to be on network television once it moves from Fox to USA. As far as AEW numbers for the quarter, Dynamite went, and this is from the Warner Brothers media call, I believe, or from AEW's media research that Dave Meltzer's putting here. Dynamite went from an average, and by the way, all these figures include free tickets. It's not just sold tickets. So they went from 5,100 to 4,800 for Collision. And for Dynamite, they went from 6,500 to Dynamite went from 5,100 to 4,800. I should put my glasses on. While Collision went from 6,500 to 4,100. Now, I know that the Collision in Montreal has a really low pre-sale. I wonder if that has anything to do that Collision no longer airs in Canada. It only aired in Canada for a little while. Apparently, they're going to TKO people are going to try and sell perspective places where they go in the future to have SmackDown there on a Friday, UFC there on a Saturday, and Raw there on a Monday. So they're going to try to make deals with cities to have that set up so the whole company can put on events in a certain place in one weekend. Apparently, WWE's Peacock deal is going to be up in March 2026. Apparently, unlike in the Vince McMahon era where they didn't have advertising on the barricades and on the ring itself, in the TKO era, it's going to be more like UFC and AEW is doing this as well, where they're going to be selling advertising on the ring and on the ringside barricades. They're also going to work on making dual sponsorships with the company. So when UFC gets sponsorships with energy drinks, let's say, they're going to try and also get them to sponsor WWE, give special deals, which might help WWE get more sponsors, which traditionally more people want to sponsor a competitive sport like UFC rather than an entertainment sport like WWE. And of course, WWE has its controversies in their third quarter filings. And I also mentioned this in a daily news update. They did kind of throw in a little jab at Vince McMahon / a warning about the adverse effects of having Vince McMahon with the company. They said, quote, Mr. McMahon's membership on the board of directors could expose us to negative publicity and or have other adverse financial and operational impacts on the business. His membership also may result in additional scrutiny or otherwise exacerbate the other risks described herein. Any of those outcomes could directly or indirectly have adverse financial and operational impacts on our company. On our business, rather, end quote. So that leads me to believe that they might keep Vince. Not that it matters, as Vince is almost 80 and a billionaire, but they may only keep Vince around while he's helping them. Like apparently he helped UFC get their Saudi Arabia deal recently. There's other stuff he can help with, but who knows how long they're going to keep him around when they feel his negative impact outweighs the positive impact. WWE announced that NXT is going to be moving to the CW network in October 2024 for a 5-year deal and an increase of about 20 to 25 million per year in rights fees, bringing it between 34 and 42 million dollars a year in rights fees total. Including what they're making right now is about 15 million. So they're getting an additional 20 to 25 million. That'll be huge for the company. It is going to go live apparently. So for the first time, Raw, SmackDown, and NXT are going to be live every week. They are going to apparently use talent from the main roster still. And it's interesting because now Raw is on USA, which has about 7 million less viewers than the CW. NXT is actually going to be seen on a network that has 7 million more viewers than Raw, SmackDown is on USA. Raw, it's still unknown what network Raw is going to be on. It could be on the WB network, even though that's a long shot. It could be on Disney Plus. Could be on USA. Who knows? Time's going to tell. They have October till October 2024 to make that call. Billy Corgan's NWA. There was a lot of talk that they might be on the CW, but it's unlikely that WWE. Well, not that WWE would allow it, but who knows? Like you already see the CW making a big deal announcing NXT is going to be on that channel. Why would they want still NWA, which is a much lower brand? With, let's face it, they have no real stars at all on NWA, and most of the time NWA airs in a studio where you can't even see the audience, because the audience is only like 20 to 30 people. So why they would still want that, I don't know. There's talk that the NWA might only be on the CW app, or it might be somewhere else. Time will tell. Apparently, the Coyote versus Acme movie that John Cena was one of the stars in has been cut due to cutbacks. It had already finished taping, but they're not going to release it. Apparently, the Philadelphia 76ers had a WWE night on November 8th where Charlotte Flair appeared with her husband Andrade. Jade Cargill, after all the hype, has not been used in several weeks by WWE. Which you would think they'd want to put her on WWE television as soon as possible after she last appeared on AEW television. Because of the hype and the buzz, it seems that whenever she does appear, it's going to have less buzz. AJ Styles, who I once defeated twice in one night, I pinned twice in one night back in 2014, is going to return on SmackDown tonight. Carlito, who I've also defeated, is wrestling Bobby Lashley tonight on SmackDown. It's going to be Carlito's first singles match in WWE in many years. Now, keep in mind, I was the first to report that Carlito was returning to WWE. I'm the one that broke the news on that. It wasn't Sean Sapp, as Vince Russo says. He only adds the Ross in there to avoid being made fun of, which I don't even know who he is. I just watched a Vince Russo interview on this channel from last night, and I found that funny. WWE had 2 house shows last weekend. One November 4th in Rochester, New York, that had 4,789 fans. The other in Springfield, Massachusetts, which had 3,950 fans. The Raw in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, that Gene Snitsky appeared at, doing a skit with, I don't even remember her name, Zack Ryder's girlfriend. It had 6,600 fans for that show. Gene Snitsky is from that area. Apparently, Netflix is also a possible buyer of Raw. As far as the Crown Jewels show last weekend in Saudi Arabia, apparently they announced 22,000 were in the building, but it was only set up for 9,109. So they fudged the attendance by over double. In AEW news, AEW's Warner Brother Media third quarter earnings call happened this week, where they announced their stock fell 19%, and they lost $417 million last quarter. The Bunny, Laura Dennis, 36, who has not wrestled for AEW for over 2 months. It's been announced she's been released from the company. She did have 2 matches for Great North Bet Wrestling back when she was Cherry Bomb, which I did put the links to in the description. Nice girl. Nothing negative to say about the Bunny. Maybe I already told Jack Kilby he should look into bringing her in for future Great North Wrestling events. Apparently, there was only 3 matches on last Friday's AEW Rampage show because Metallic refused to job to Commander. However, they still used Metallic on Collision a few days later. Now, I don't even know who the hell they are. I'm guessing they're Mexican wrestlers. AEW Collision from Wichita, Kansas, where I once wrestled Sandman, had 3,026 fans total in the building. Dynamite from this week in the former wrestling hotbed of Portland, Oregon, home of Billy Jack Haynes, who's going to do a phone interview with me soon. at over 4,000 fans, including the comps. In MLW news, Alex Hammerstone is trying to get out of his contract. He hasn't wrestled for the company for months, but he says he can't get the owner, Court Bauer, on the phone. I mean, they're known for keeping wrestlers under contract and not using them or paying them. Such as apparently AAA Ares and Aramaris, sorry. Don't know how to pronounce them. They've been recently let out of their contracts after not being used since early 2022. They were allowed to still work for AAA with their contracts, so at least they were able to make money elsewhere. In UFC news, UFC, which has been on TSN in Canada since 2015, is moving to Rogers. Rogers is the bigger of the two channels. I have a feeling one of the reasons for that is WWE owns a large percentage in Rogers. Of course, Rogers Sportsnet is where WWE airs here in Canada. But back when I had a lawsuit with WWE, I remember my lawyers saying they researched it, and WWE owned part of Rogers Sportsnet. Vince McMahon is working for UFC as chairman of the board of TKO. George Masvidal pled guilty in a plea bargaining deal to misdemeanor battery in a case where he allegedly punched Kobe Covington outside of a Miami restaurant in March 2022. He was sentenced to time served and to pay all court costs. He was facing up to 15 years in prison. He did an interview with Ariel Helwani after that where he expressed no remorse, and Helwani was funny enough, acting like there was no money to be made off of YouTube when Helwani makes as much as $700,000 a year off of YouTube, his YouTube channel. So I thought that was funny, since Helwani always is on UFC's case to pay fighters more, but he allegedly doesn't pay fighters for interviews himself and makes a ton of money off of the interviews. Of course, Stipe Miocic was supposed to face John Jones at MSG this coming weekend. Originally, they were selling tickets at an average of $1,000 each. Now the average is down to $365, according to the Wrestling Observer. So obviously, without John Jones, who's supposedly going to be out about 8 months with a pec tear, UFC is losing out a bit. UFC still does well for pay-per-views, but it seems like, I mean, and they do well for like live attendance, but it seems to me there's probably, because there's no, I mean, to UFC fans there are stars, but to outside fans, I mean, the last big star was Conor McGregor, who's nearing the end of his career. John Jones is a star, probably their biggest star, but no, not near the level of Conor McGregor. And he was saying he might even retire after the Stipe Miocic fight. So they need to find a new fighter that has a lot of charisma. I'm not saying they don't have good fighters, but I mean, I tried to watch the UFC Embeddeds for this upcoming MSG show, and I did watch them, but I mean, they were fairly boring. It's because the current fighters lack charisma. So, I mean, the company's obviously very healthy, but I feel that, I mean, maybe because I'm from Canada and GSP was super popular here, but I feel like during the days where Anderson Silva and GSP were on top, everybody was talking about UFC. And now, like, you don't hear about UFC. Like, you don't hear people talking at the gym about UFC. And only my friends that are involved in martial arts talk to me about UFC. I don't see as many average people still talking about it. But that's just my observation, that it seems like they really need some new stars. And it seems like, as far as WWE, the whole Roman Reigns winning every match is getting really stale. And it doesn't seem like bringing in a second world title with Seth Rollins is like making things any more exciting. I think Seth Rollins' best days of popularity are behind him. They need to make some new stars in WWE too. I'm not saying Roman Reigns isn't over, but I think most people are getting pretty sick of these predictable WWE pay-per-views where you can predict who's going to win every match, like this past one from Saudi Arabia, before the pay-per-view even happens.
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please like this video if you enjoyed it and click the subscribe button to not miss any of our latest shoot interviews, match videos, or news updates.